lot to cover and not a lot of time, and we really want to set up a cracking pace here. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves by name, their company, their network, and their key filters, what they're looking for. So you just got a few sentences to define yourself.
Sure. Paul Cabana, H2, which is the spin-off network of History, and we are looking for core info-driven series.
My name is Claudia Rüthe from ZDF German Television, and we're always looking for investigative global issues.
Jennifer Hyde with CNN. We're looking for great stories, first and foremost. Past that, current affairs, general interest. It's a pretty wide berth.
David Royal, Smithsonian Channel. Dramatic storytelling with strong visual richness. It needs to all be HD. It must be unique to us in the US market, and we need all rights cleared.
JC Mills from National Geographic Channel here in New York. I'm the Director of Development. I'm going to second everything David just said. And also, you know, the main focus for us, just 3 buckets, I can get into it later, more subcultures, absolutely. Male-driven characters, outdoor adventure, and science, and big specials.
All right, thank you so much. It's a great panel. We've got H2, a hot network. We've got CNN, Smithsonian Channel, and Nat Geo, fantastic brands here. And we have Claudia from Europe, so we really have a fantastic lineup. And we are going to, in this, follow in a step-by-step way. We're going to speak to the commissioners about how they receive, how they filter, and how they process, and then approve pitches. So the first question, we'll start with the pitch process. And I'm going to ask our panelists one by one. I mean, so Paul, how are your pitch meetings set up? Do people just walk in the door? Are you open to pitches?
We are always open to pitches. The way we're set up is development and production are not separate, so everyone is accountable for bringing in projects. So we're always on the lookout for, you know, it's people reaching out to us via email, through agents, through word of mouth, to come in and set up an appointment to talk about their projects.
Would you say your doors are always open, or they're just slightly open?
They're somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between.
Jar.
Yeah.
So moving on to our European environment.
Yeah, we receive pitches through email, through agents, through our ZDF Enterprise affiliate. And if we have the feeling that the topic is sort of interest for the German market, we get in touch with the production companies. And if it's going to be a big co-production, then we would have ZDF Enterprises involved to sort of get that going. And I would say our doors are always very, very open, depending on whether the topic is interesting for the German market.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I am based in Atlanta, and as a result, I think I probably have fewer in-person meetings than most. Most of my exchange is via email or phone, most of all. So by the time we get to an in-person meeting, the project is generally quite mature in the development process. But that said, my door is certainly always open, and you never know where the next great story is going to come from.
So since you are based in Atlanta, are markets very important for you to get in touch with and to establish relationships and maintain relationships?
I mean, I think clearly we all share that investment. I think it's a great opportunity to see people and connect.
So David, how about the Smithsonian
I would
Channel?
say there's a constant draft, if not a gale, constantly going through our office because our doors are always wide open. Sometimes we wonder what we're up to because we see so many people. But we're always amazed at the projects that we pick up from unexpected sources. And as a small, young, feisty channel, we really need to do that. And we work with independent producers all over America, and we work with international broadcasters, not just from the big markets like Germany and France and the UK, but also from smaller markets too, and that's worked well for us.
So JC, you're a feisty, rebranded channel. And so how open are you?
Yeah, we're so feisty that we don't even have doors. So bring everything, and we'll tell you kind of where it sits in our landscape. I would say the most important thing for pitching us, just from a perspective of just getting in the door, I'd ask that everyone just take a look at the channel, at least for a minute, before you pitch us, to know what we have on the air. I know that sounds really obvious, but you'd be amazed the pitches that we get are just not even close to the mark. And I'll hear everything, but I, just for your benefit, just take a look at the channel, the website, and you'll see all the new stuff that we're doing, because this is not your grandfather's Nat Geo, as I like to say to our producers. So just, yeah, give it a look.
So what kills a pitch? We'll come back down the panel here. So what kills a pitch for you is if they haven't looked at the channel recently.
Yeah, I mean,
is there anything else?
That's a huge pet peeve of mine. Just producers, like I said, doors are always open, but just make sure it's relevant to what we're doing now, because those doors could close if you keep coming to me with things that don't make sense for us. And I'll take pitches all day long. I would say, try to get into our heads and figure out what we're going to ask you before we even ask, because I hate being in pitch meetings when they don't have any of the answers to the questions I'm asking when it comes to budget, when it comes to timeline, when it comes to, if you have talent in your show, make sure you have a deal with your talent before you walk in the door. I had a situation where we got really far down the line on a show and the talent wasn't locked up, so then we had to try to do the talent deal, and it turned out that the talent deal wasn't going to close, which means that we weren't going to do the show because that talent was a key man in that show.
So do your homework all around before you pitch.
Yeah, come in prepared, because it's really a big sign of you as a producer. If you come in and you don't have answers, your deals aren't closed, it's just kind of a sign of things to come when it comes to production. Big red flag for me.
David, what are your...
I'll second a lot of what's just been said. I mean, look at the channel. It's so obvious, but it's amazing how few people really do their homework in that way. I'm a big believer in budgets. If you come to me with a proposal and you haven't got a clue what it's going to cost, I barely want to look at it, because you need to know, is it feasible? Is it something you can even consider? You may love it, but if it's extraordinarily expensive, there's no point in having that conversation in many cases. So it really helps to have an idea. It doesn't have to be a detailed budget, but a good game plan. I'm always going to want to know whether the co-production partner's involved and who they are. Absolutely key. That can make a big difference too. And then, my other big word of advice, I think for me, it's a little word of advice, is don't do massive proposals. Don't bring in massive proposals in the early stages. We have short attention spans. We have piles of proposals and very little time to get through them. Try and do your pitch, try and do your sale in 2 pages or less.
Called one sheets for a reason, guys.
Yes. We stretch to 2 just about. But you're going to have a much better chance of us coming back to you and saying, give us more, if you give us something short to start with.
Jennifer, thank you, David.
Agree and agree. I am constantly surprised by the number of people who say to me, I didn't know CNN did documentaries. I didn't know, and we've been putting award-winning docs on the air for now 25 years at the network. So finding and watching CNN Presents or the offerings now of CNN Films is really important, and looking sort of historically at how broad our range is. I agree very much with David that that a shorter pitch, at least in the beginning, is very well advised. I think we'll begin a great relationship together if I'm respectful of your time, as I hope you will be of mine. And I don't want to put you to a lot of trouble if it's something that's going to be completely off the mark. I would say the main thing for me that kills, or one other thing for me that kills a pitch is how long it takes. And by that I mean, I'll sometimes sit there with someone, I'm 15 minutes into the pitch, I still don't exactly know what we're talking about, and the show itself is going to run 42 minutes. I mean, we're through 2 acts. So right off the top, in the written materials and in the verbal presentation, knock me out of my chair. An elevator pitch, a good paragraph, and then we can talk about the rest of it.
Thank you. What kills a pitch?
Well, You know, I completely agree with what all of you have just said. I think a pitch can be killed if the person who's trying to pitch doesn't really know what the storyline is going to be. And like you were just saying, if you're talking about a pitch and you've been way into a session and you've talked like for 15 minutes and you still don't know what the storyline is going to be, that certainly does kill a pitch. So what I always tell my colleagues, if you're not able to tell me what the film is going to be about in 2 sentences, try to make things clear in 2 sentences. And that really helps a lot. And that will help you with each and every pitch. And like my colleagues have said, it's very important to sort of have figures so that we as commissioners know where we are heading.
So you've got to have an elevator pitch. What about you, Paul?
Well, I'm going to finish the chorus here and echo what they said, but I'm going to give 2 pieces of tactical advice. One, something not to do, and then another, something to do. In terms of what not to do, the thing that kills it for me is when someone talks to me as if they're pitching a film festival as opposed to a network. And I love your passion, but you have to be mindful of the business and the channel that we're running. So that's a very simple thing not to do. And the second thing is, and this is so easy, be mindful, to JC's point, be aware of what the show is, find out what's working for them, and simply frame your ideas in relation to what is working for that network. So A and B is working, this is similar because of this, you might be interested for this reason. It's such a simple thing to do, but it will always get our attention.
Thanks, Paul.
And just to jump on that, you know, like we have a show called Diggers on the air right now, and if someone were to come in and say, you know, I think this would be a great companion to Diggers, it just shows that you're looking at the channel and you're really thinking like, look at our air, because it seems like it's kind of a science, but it's really not. We look at what we have on our air, we see what the holes are going to be. You know, you guys might not know that, but we do, and we try to partner that up with the pitches that they come in, and we try to say, you know, we have Diggers, like what would be great with Diggers? So I'm telling all you guys, we need a companion for Diggers right now. So check it out and let us know if you have anything.
So thanks to JC, I'm just going to ask you quickly about formats. Let's just get a show of hand. Is an elevator pitch enough for you to continue with the meeting, like one or 2 sentences in a big concept? Or do you need, the question's getting complicated, do you need a couple of pages, or do you want video to show how? Yeah, let's start with JC.
You know, you could say something like, you know, it's Pawn Star. We have a show on, plugging all my shows. We have a show on called Lords of War. I just premiered last night, and it's basically Antiques Roadshow for antique arms and armor. So if someone walked into a pitch and said, you know, I had this idea, it's Antiques Roadshow for arms and armor, I'd be like, got it, cool. What do you have? I'm like, let me see it. Right. So for lines, simple log lines like that, you know, it's X meets X.
Do you want video? Do you want video as well at that first?
It depends if you have a character that is going to be your star. You 100% need tape.
David,
for me, the first 2 sentences are moderately important. I'm going to give you time to get through the 2 pages, so but it's great if you've got something to hang it on right up front. I mean, it just gets your attention. But we're certainly going to hang in there we're going to give you enough time to get through the full story before we make any our minds up. But I think every producer should have their elevator pitch ready. You never know when you're going to bump into someone, maybe someone that you haven't scheduled a meeting with, and you've got 5 minutes in a bar, and if you've got an elevator pitch and you can do it really quickly so that you don't waste their time or bore them with it, just grab their attention for a moment, you'll have a meeting the next day set up. So I think that's something every time you have a great project, you should always work out what is your 1-minute pitch.
So David, you do content-driven documentaries, classic docs. Do you want to see video early on, or will you wait?
Well, I'd say the same thing. We do classic docs, but we also do serial programming. You know, the one thing I want to say is, and I always, whenever the characters, yes, we want to see some video. It helps to see, again, shorter is more is less. You know, a 4-minute clip reel, well put together, selling a project is always a great plus, but it's not a requirement for us. But the one thing I also want to say is, yeah, do your research about, in our case, our channel, but think outside the box as well. I don't want everyone to think that all we're asking to do is replicate what everyone else is doing or even replicate what we're doing. And sometimes you can get too stuck thinking about the channel. Sometimes you look at it, and I think Nat Geo has wrestled with this, and certainly we have, where people say, well, it's Smithsonian, it's intellectual, it's academic, and so we get pitches that are in those veins. And in fact, at Impact, 2 years running, there was a very good producer who'd bring me his most serious and boring ideas. And it took 2 Impact sessions to finally get across to him, no, that's not what I want. And then he came back with something that was great. So I think it's okay to surprise us sometimes.
Jennifer.
Yes, I need that sort of executive summary, elevator pitch, but I also want the 2 pages that follow, for sure. And I didn't mean to leave you with the impression that I won't hear you out. I will absolutely hear you out. But what I need to know is that you have complete clarity about what the spine of the show is. I want off the top, we have to stop everybody dead in their tracks, away from their phones, put down the remote, the whole thing. What is going to make that happen? So that's what the import is for me on that top line, as it were. But the pages that follow, be they 1 or 3 or 5, are equally important, because what it says to me is you've thought it all the way through. In retrospect, I also thought of one other pitch killer, which I'll throw out there, which is I often get pitches about a subject matter or about an issue that we should do. What your pitch needs to tell me, though, is what the television looks like. Not, yes, why I should do it, but then how are we going to do it? So that's pretty important. Regarding video, you know, it's not a prerequisite. Obviously, we'll eventually get to a place where it's necessary. If you have something, by all means, send it, but I don't require you to spend your time or your money cutting a killer trailer or sizzle reel in order to consider the idea.
Great. Thank you.
Not really much for me to add, but I think what really is important is that you give me an idea of the topic that you want to treat. Give me an idea of the axis that you have, why your axis is so special. And I certainly would want to know what you want the film to look like. Is it going to be more of a reportage? Is it going to be a documentary? Is it going to be with CGI? Whatever ideas you have, you need to mention that in the pitch. I think
Yeah, one extra question for you. For your network, what percentage of your ultimate commissions would be from producers who are outside Germany or who involve co-production partners outside?
Well, that usually depends on the slot. Because depending on the slot where we air, we sort of have the funds. But we are in a very fortunate situation that we do have funds, and quite a few important funds. So it doesn't really matter. We sort of make up, we sort of decide on how much funds we put into a project and how many co-production partners we would need. And we also have the possibility that a producer comes to us and we have ZF Enterprises that sort of gets co-production partners into a project if the funds are not enough that we can raise.
So bottom line, you're really open to international partners.
Right. And we've done very, very much.
So Paul, I've forgotten what the original question was. What works? Paper, video?
Well, I would say video is really critical. And it is not absolutely mandatory, but it is so critical, especially now more than ever, because anyone with an iPhone considers themselves a filmmaker now. And seeing a little bit of footage to understand production value and knowing who we're talking to and the skills they bring is the most effective way for us to vet new producers. So that it's also giving us the tools to sell it internally. And everything you're telling us, and this is the reason why an elevator pitch is so important, is because we're going to go turn around and sell it to every single department. And if we can't do that succinctly, or with an asset like video, then it makes our job so much more difficult. So.